Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Star in Focus podcast. My name is Deanna Oakes, and I am your host. And today we have with us the wonderful Sam Mattern. How are you, Sam?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. Sam sits on the board with me of Star. We are in 2023 right now. Who knows how long both of us will be here, but hopefully for a while. I've had the pleasure of knowing him for a while, but why don't you go ahead and tell our listeners what you do and how you got into this organization?
Sure. Well, I didn't know any court reporters. I had never heard of court reporting, which is the reaction that I get when I try to explain what it is that I do when I'm asked. I'm not a court reporter. I moved to Columbus to go to DeVry for computer engineering, and at the end of that program, I started applying at different companies. Wasn't really sure what I was looking for, and Spectrum Reporting called me in for an interview, and I walked in knowing nothing about the industry. I didn't know any lawyers, court reporters. I didn't know the first thing about a deposition.
How did they get your information?
I submitted my
Oh,
resume. I just, when you're going hot and heavy and you're putting your resume out there and just thinking, who knows? I'll find my way in somewhere. I'm pretty creative, and the interview kind of caught my attention, and I'm glad that they gave me a chance because as someone who now performs interviews with people, it's nice when someone comes in knowing something about your
right.
organization, having done some research, and here I was, a naive, child basically, and walking into an interview knowing nothing about the industry. But I knew from talking with them, they had a lot of tech needs, especially with real time. It was so much more difficult when in 2005 when I started with the company, and until Stenograph came in and made all of our lives easier with CLVS, I was spending a lot of time assisting with real-time setups for trials and arbitrations, running cables and troubleshooting all of those connections.
Yeah, so I want to know for the
And
people that aren't in the, sorry to cut you off, love, but
oh,
when
no
you
problem.
say that, you didn't know anything and you were running cables, like, so what did that look like back then? I mean, because I wasn't in the industry in 2005 and obviously the technology wasn't advanced. So was it like when you see people that, work for bands that they just have their cables in their arms, you know what I mean? And they're just trucking along. I mean, was that what it was like? Just cords everywhere?
To some extent, yes. Thankfully, the cords were thinner, so it wasn't as difficult to move around. But yeah, there were serial adapters, which were these big blocky things, and they adapted into what were essentially flat Ethernet cables, and you would run them between the computers. And so the reporter on her laptop would, and back then it required a special secondary card that went into a special slot, and you connected that adapter on one side and you ran it over to the attorney's system and connected it there. But in addition to just the physical parts of it, and in for each connection there were, you know, 4 or 5 points of physical failure. Then there were all of the software settings that you had to go in because every system was different, and you had to tell the software what port to listen to, and you had to know how to go into Windows settings to find what port was assigned to that thing. And every now and again, the lawyer's laptop was locked down and couldn't utilize whatever adapter we brought. At some point, they made USB adapters, which made things easier but also harder because you could just plug it right in. But if they didn't have the right drivers, then sometimes they'd have to have their tech person come down and get it hooked up. So it was just a lot of points of failure, really. I mean, between the software settings and all of the cables, and each cable had an adapter at each end, and those could fail. And if your Ethernet cables or anything like mine, those little tabs break off, and so then they can pull out. All of that stuff applied. So it was just a much more challenging setup with more troubleshooting involved.
And now I imagine I mean, a lot of it's wireless at this point, right?
Absolutely. When CLVS came out, and iCVNet for the iPad, that was life changing for me because it freed me up to do other things. Really, I didn't have to be there for those big cases. I mean, sometimes I might still show up and just make sure everything got started, but honestly, it really put the power into the reporter's hands. They felt so much more comfortable out there with that technology because it was simple.
Right.
It was just so much easier.
Yeah, and KCUNet is awesome. The wireless and the connection. You can have so many people. But what's your role then? So are you even not a videographer? Are you more of in a supervisory role at this point?
Yes. So after gosh, many years being an active videographer and all around tech guy, troubleshoot guy, I started taking on the owner wanted to start scaling back her involvement in the day-to-day operations. So she started transitioning those roles over to me. So I became the office manager, managing our resources. And then that just kind of evolved. I kind of took that on slowly and started taking on more and more from her. And then before I knew it, most of that fell on my shoulders. So I don't get out with the clients as much as I used to. I still do from time to time. That part of it I miss because, as anyone will tell you who has taken depositions, you get such an interesting mix. And as an engineer who loves to learn, I really enjoyed my time in all of the depositions that I've been in and trials because I would do trial presentation as well.
Oh yeah. So tell us a little bit about trial presentation. So for people that are unfamiliar with even videographers, because I think at this point you might be the first videographer that we actually interviewed. So, and I say we like there's a mouse in my pocket, but you know what I mean. But so tell me a little bit about, that realm and what you're, what are you looking for? Are you hiring videographers? How do you get into this, even industry? I know that you happen to stumble into it, but what would be the path for people that are interested in this?
Sure. Well, I think that for legal videography, it's a difficult thing because a lot of people that I've run into that have gone the video route have movie making in mind,
Sure.
right? So people that are drawn to the camera are usually drawn to the camera because they want to make art and they don't want to necessarily sit in a room all day videotaping a static talking head like I'm framed right now. It's difficult, right? It's not the people drawn to video aren't really generally drawn to the legal side of things, and so it makes it difficult at times to hire people. But what I find is, fortunately there's a video school here in Columbus, and we've talked to several people there, and for some it is appealing to them because they weren't really sure what they were going to do, and in video, filmmaking and whatnot's a hard business to break into,
Sure. Yeah.
and this is a way to kind of marry their technical love for operating a video camera and getting experience and hours under their belt while at the same time kind of having a more steady income. And what I found is, like in my case, as someone who loves to learn, I found it greatly interesting because, especially for me, I was doing a lot of doctor depositions, and my mom was a nurse, and I've always just been drawn to medical stuff. So learning about all of these different body uh, physiological things and what goes wrong with people, and getting to hear that from experts in the field, I loved it. I ate it up. I once was flying somewhere and I was sitting next to a guy and struck up a conversation. He was a pilot and he was just returning back from Florida. He had just had spinal procedure done, and we were talking, and I was asking him a bunch of questions about it, and we talked at length, and we got near the end of the flight, and he goes, "Well, how long have you been a doctor?" I said, "Well, I'm not a doctor. I've just been listening to testimony about spines for the past 10 years."
Right. Right.
So for someone who is intrigued by that and who loves learning, you can kind of get over the not having that creative part of the process. And there are things that videographers can do in the legal realm that have that creative storytelling, movie making component to it, and that is what we call settlement videos. So
Ooh.
that is truly the same thing as making a movie. You work with the attorney to usually it's someone who's representing someone who is injured in a very critical way, who has lifelong, life-changing injuries and may have many years to live. And you have to work with them to tell a story, to send directly to the decision makers to show them this is how it's going to play out in trial. Do you really want to take it this far? And we've had the hard thing about settlement videos is we never get to talk about some of the interesting ones that we get to work on, and sometimes we never even find out what the outcome
Yeah, I
is.
hate
So
that.
you pour all these
Yeah.
hours and your heart and soul into this very large project and just put it out there in the world and hope for the best.
Yeah. So, okay, so you said settlement video. I think I've known them as a day in the life. Is that the same kind of thing where they're basically
So
just gathering?
that's
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so those are commonly confused, and we also do day in the life videos. So a day in the life video is similar in some aspects in that we follow the person around for the day, trying to document the injuries and how they have affected their day-to-day life. And we do quite a bit of those, but those have to be very objective because you're just trying to document the facts, document how this person has been affected. We then can take aspects of that and use that in a settlement video where, kind of think of those, Sarah McLachlan,
Yeah.
music in the background, like really you're trying to affect emotions in the settlement videos. And that's something that we really work hard not to do with the day in the life because we want the day in the life to be able to be accepted as evidence because it truly is just showing what this person goes through on a daily basis.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've seen clips of them and they are very, like you said, the Sarah McLachlan just nails it on the head because it feels very emotional. But how would you, so trial presentation, how would you compare? I mean, is there really no creativity or you just stop, play, stop, play? What's that about?
So trial presentation is a very interesting one because it can really there's a wide range of what happens before a trial. I have some clients that are very well prepared, and then other ones that they just kind of throw you a thumb drive and you walk in with them, and you really have no idea what's going to happen. And I like it in that it's kind of like a giant puzzle because especially for some of the clients that I work with because they're not well prepared. And when I say well prepared, they themselves are prepared, but they have not spent the time with me to say to come up with some sort of like code. Like when I say this is what I'm referring to. They know their case inside and out.
Right.
I don't. And a lot of times they don't want to spend the time and the money to prepare another resource ahead of time because it might settle
Yep.
the week before. Or we just had one. It was supposed to still be ongoing, and on day two of trial, they settled. So it's hard, and I understand why they don't want to spend a month ahead of time trying to make sure that we have all of the documents that we need and work with us to create a system that so that we're on the same page, so that when they refer to hospital ABC record, I know exactly which one they're talking about. And so it's a lot of loading in documents and trying to organize them in the way that you think your client will refer to them. Some people get lucky. They've got clients that they work with all the time and they just gel and they know their style and they get the stuff ahead of time and can really go through the documents and make sure that they understand what all the things are. and understand the facts of the case. You just don't always get that lucky.
Yeah, I think that goes for just about everything in our field, right? It really makes a difference. There are some people that are just very easy to work with and others that aren't. But trial presentation, as a new reporter, I thought trials were going to be, CSI. I thought it was going to be just, fireworks and just like very exciting, nail biting events, and they're not at all, like at all. Um, so when you're in trial doing this presentation, are you behind the scenes or are you actually standing in front? Because as you know, I don't work in court, but I have done some per diem stuff. So I've had a little, my toe dipped in, if you will, but I have not seen a videographer in court. And I don't know if, you have a laser pointer or what's going on. What's your involvement when you're in trial presentation?
Sure. Well, we are kind of like the laser pointer. It's we are. It's funny because we are not standing. We're kind of off to the side, but it's known pretty early on that we're the one driving what's being put up on screen. So when you're struggling to find something, it feels like hours. Time moves so slow when you're under the gun. There's a reason why they call it the hot seat, being in the hot seat, and it really is. It's a mental game. I had to learn really early on how to keep the physiological the flight, the fight or flight response from taking over when I'm struggling to find something for a client. It's at times difficult, and and all eyes are on you, or at least it feels that way, right?
Yeah.
The jury probably is like, oh, thank goodness I can take a little breather. But it feels like all eyes are on you to conjure up this thing that you had no idea that it was coming or where it is.
Right.
Obviously, under ideal circumstances, you know exactly what they're asking for, you know exactly how to call it up. It just depends on, again, how they're asking for the documents that they want. But yeah, it's very much we're sitting there, we have our own table, and we're calling things up and taking them away, zooming in, highlighting, playing back video clips. There are times where we, as a videographer, we record a video deposition and they don't tell us what needs edited out until we're ready to go. And we have to basically edit it out on the fly. Sometimes they'll give the jury a 10-minute break and they're just scratching through the transcript, and then they hand it to you and say, okay, all that stuff that's scratched out can't stay in. And so you have to know how to work around that. And likewise, sometimes they put someone up on the stand and they have an idea of where they're going with it, but they're trying to impeach them, but they don't really know when they might give a different answer. And so you have to be ready to go when they ask the witness a question and the witness gives an answer that's different than what they gave in their deposition. And they say, well, that's interesting. Can you pull up his deposition, page 29, lines 1 through 8? And you have to be ready to put it up like that and play just that section.
And I imagine that's probably where timestamps come in handy for you, right? Because if you're playing a video of someone, the page number does not mean anything at all. And
yes,
um,
yes, we synchronize all of our transcripts before trial using YesLaw's product. It's awesome because even when we don't think we're going to be in a situation to impeach, when you have those last minute things that need to come out, when you have it synchronized, it makes the process very easy.
yeah.
If you don't have it synchronized, good luck.
Yeah, I can't imagine not having timestamps on something that was videoed. That feels like a real struggle. That would be a nightmare. Luckily, like you said, we have the software and everything. That's just a matter of a click of a button to bring up timestamps or whatever. But yeah, that would be a hot mess for sure. I could just imagine just fast forwarding, like just everybody wait, what a
Yeah,
nightmare.
hang on a second.
So what would you say is your favorite thing about your job?
My favorite thing about my job, well, I'll answer it two different ways. My favorite part about my job before was the constant learning. The access to so much new and interesting information is what has kept me in this industry. it's unusual for a technologist to stay anywhere for longer than a few years before moving into a different role because we're constantly seeking that new whiz bang thing,
Yeah.
and moving on and moving up. But for me, the all of the different types of cases that I've had the pleasure of getting to be involved in over time is really what has kept me here in this role. It's something new every day, and I just would not survive in a different type of role. I need variety, I need novelty, and I need new information. I always want to be learning. If I have to hear the same thing more than once, I'm moving on.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear it again. I want to hear that next thing. What's that next thing? My favorite part about my role now, in addition to my role on the board with Star and in the direction that we've been going with that, is I for me I now get to work with my folks and figure out where their pain points are, and I do my best if I can fix a pain point because I'm an engineer. Every problem has a solution. We might not like the solution, and sometimes it's the solution is just as bad as the problem, so we'll just stick with the problem. But I've been working recently with automating some processes to make people's lives easier. And so if I can take that thing, and specifically in our organization, the reporter's paperwork. So I'm sure you take assignments and there's all this paperwork that you have to fill out.
Yes.
And 95% of it was already in what was given to you
Yeah.
by the
Yeah.
agency that sent you the information. So I wrote a process internally that takes our assignment email, pulls the information out of it, and pre-populates the worksheet for the reporter,
Wow.
so that he or she can spend their time focusing on the deposition and not busy work.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking for things like that. What are things that I can do that can make a big impact over a year for someone in their time? Because Lord knows reporters spend a lot of time outside of the deposition, and the last thing they want to do is be tied up with busy work. They need to be focusing on their unique skill set and what they bring to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I say wow because I can't believe that you're just like, yeah, I just wrote this process. Is that like writing code? I mean, because it sounds so simple, and you're absolutely right. That is what we want. And I work with a lot of different firms, and I don't have any firm that is all dialed in that way. They all have you go through. And some of the paperwork processes take a good 5, maybe even 10 minutes just to get through, to input all the information, do you know what I mean? It should just be
Oh, sure.
auto-populated. So,
Sure.
was it a code that you wrote? I mean, are you that kind of a engineer?
I'm all kinds of an engineer, yes. But, um, you know, coding is something that I've done for a long time, and it's not something I get to do a lot of. And it's something that I've been into a little bit more recently, um, because of the needs, because I saw this as something that was a pain point. And I'm like, I can spend a week or two in code land dialing this in and making the lives of my reporters better. It's worth the investment. So yeah, it's that particular process was like 1,200 lines of code or something, and took me a while.
Yeah, I mean, I
But
don't I don't know enough about codes to know if that's a lot or not a lot, but just the fact that you wrote it
I
is
don't either.
amazing. You heard it here, folks. Spectrum Reporting will do your paperwork for you. No, that's amazing though. I can't even believe that you could just whip that out. I mean, I can believe it. It feels like something that you would do, Sam, because you're a jack of all trades. But how convenient and what a good selling point. I feel like you could just put that on your website, and it would attract reporters. Just that in and of itself. So, how are you guys feeling as an industry, as a company in the industry with so much change and everything? Are you guys thriving? Are you, hungry for more reporters, for more videographers? Where's your company at right now?
Sure, that's a great question. Um, it has been an interesting 5 years for, I feel like, everybody. Uh, we're very lucky that one of the projects that I worked on early on here with Spectrum is we had video conferencing when I started here, and it was Polycom, it was dial-up lines, and there were what 6 of them, and they were all muxed together, and it was very expensive to operate. And right away, I identified, well, our equipment can just plug directly into our internet. Why are we paying for all these lines? And the problem was is that everyone else did it that way.
Right.
And if you wanted to connect a different way, you had to pay extra fees to bridge the two. And once things changed, I kept waiting and waiting, and as more and more and more people transition, once it crossed in the 60, 70% of people doing it the other way, then I switched us. And then that quickly turned into, well, I've got someone in a remote area and they're not anywhere close to a video conferencing facility. And this was at the time we were using these national networks that helped us find these video conferencing facilities. So we started using Zoom, and this was the point I was getting to. We started using Zoom very, very early on because I wasn't happy with the other platform that we were using, and it worked fine for using traditional video conferencing equipment, which is what was prevalent at the time, and bringing in these odd, one or two-Z people that are far-flung places that didn't have access to a video conferencing facility. And after testing a bunch of platforms, when Zoom came out, when I tried it, it was the first platform that really worked. It just worked. It was reliable, that put audio first, because, a video can glitch a little bit, and that's okay as long as the audio is there for depositions, right? You have to be able to hear it.
Yeah.
And so when the pandemic happened, we had 5, 6, 7 years worth of Zoom troubleshooting experience under our belt. We had a few people in our organization who knew everything about Zoom and how to troubleshoot it and how to set it up and schedule. And in the early days of the pandemic, that really for us was the thing that we needed to get the rest of our clients open to the idea of using Zoom, because it was just the medical malpractice attorneys who had an expert out of state that were utilizing that service before and had been utilizing the video conferencing services. But that was the catalyst. And because we were able to hit the ground running, we spent a lot of time doing training with attorneys. And because of that, after the first couple of months, we were very busy. And even other resources in town, they were referring their clients to us because they didn't know how to use Zoom. And so we stayed very busy. And it was a lot at times. It was hard to keep up. I think that it's not an uncommon situation. I mean, you hear it from everybody. They have a hard time covering their book. Mm-hmm. And Zoom really came at the pandemic for us came at such a clutch time because, man, that summer before it was very difficult for us to cover our book because it only took 1 or 2 reporters in town to take a vacation, and that put the strain on everybody else. We were getting calls from their clients because so-and-so's out of town. And so we were busy because, our reporters want vacations and things too. They have families. Right. And it was so difficult, and I was concerned about what was going to happen. Where's the solution? How are we going to keep up at this pace? And, there's the average age of the reporters here in Columbus is, it matches what we see nationally. Right. I was getting concerned. And we got the last couple of graduates out of the Columbus school before it shut down. And that was in 2013. Oh. So it's been 10 years. We haven't had a new graduate out of a reporting program in Columbus because there isn't one. And so we would have hired more reporters. We tried asking, the other reporters in Columbus, asking them to come on with us. Because our reporters are employees, and I guess I should have mentioned that because that's not necessarily a common practice.
Yeah, that's not. That's very uncommon. So if you don't mind me interrupting, will you just explain I think everybody kind of knows the difference between a private contractor and an employee, but do you keep them 9 to 5? I mean, how does that, if there's no work to be done, is there always work to be done? I don't know, have any understanding of how it would work to be an employee. In this realm.
Sure. The way that we're structured, it's not unlike a independent contractor, but we provide the equipment, we provide the software and the training, and we're fortunate that the way that it's been recently, especially, we've had no problems giving the reporters as many assignments as they want to take. There were times where it was a little lean, going back. Like I said, I've been with Spectrum since 2005, and we had more reporters. And at times, there were less work, but some of our reporters wanted to only work 3 days a week
Yeah.
or 4 days a week. So it always worked out. We always found a way to have the right number of reporter employees that matched the work that we had. And if you got a little slow and you had too many reporters, well, then you got your butt out there and you hustled and you tried to bring on some new clients.
Yeah.
And likewise, at some point, you start getting too busy and everyone's complaining because they're working a lot more than they want to. And you're on the fence, like, when's the right time to bring in another person?
Yeah.
Because it's a double-edged sword. You bring someone new in, it's guaranteed that you'll have a slowdown period. Just like if you need pages, the easiest thing to do is to schedule a vacation.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's the way that it's worked for us. It's been a nice balance, that we have our staff reporters, and it's a nice mix with the types of work that we have. And because of that, we have different types. We try to keep different types of work on our book. We have stuff that's better for beginning reporters, and then stuff for the intermediate and then advanced reporters.
Nice. I feel like that's a great model. It feels like it might get a little bit challenging to, manage, but obviously you've been doing it well for a very long time. I honestly have never even heard of a firm that has employees. So I'm taken aback a little bit like, wow, I don't know if that's, I want to talk to your reporters. I want to know if they love it. I mean, because there's so much stuff that is better, in my opinion. I think that's just with everything, though, right? There's pros and cons. There's two sides to every coin. But I feel like in a lot of ways, it would just be easier sometimes to just be an employee and not have a lot of these things that come with managing your own business. But yeah, I'm intrigued for sure about the business model. I mean, has that always been the way it is or the way it was?
As far as I know, as far as I know with Spectrum, but I think that you nailed it with what you just said, and that is it's running your own business. When you're an independent, you're responsible for your equipment, the troubleshooting, the marketing, the doing the work, the production, the billing, accounts receivable, everything.
Yeah.
That kind of falls on you, and so it is a nice option for our reporters that they don't have to worry about it. If the laptop's not working, who do you think gets a call? The computer engineer.
Right, right.
If the writer goes down, we have spare writers. They don't have to worry about it. We handle the business. We handle the book of business, and we handle the billing side. I mean, they can just go out and write and get it proofed and send it in. So it's for them. It's a nice option, and it pays better than going and working for the state.
Wow, which is great because I feel like those are kind of your two options as far as I've always known. You either work for the government essentially, right, in a courthouse, or you. And the one thing, there's a lot of benefits for working for the government. They have pension programs, but I am a lot like you in the way that I really crave variety, and I don't want to go and sit in the same traffic to and from work every single day. Like that just feels so daunting to me. That having the best of both worlds, it kind of sounds like, right? So you're able to live that deposition lifestyle and still be employed. That's really cool. Spectrum reporting, everybody. Spectrum reporting.
But unlike, I would say the con for the reporter is, the independents that I work with, they get to be picky, right? They get to, if they don't want to take something, they don't have to.
Yeah.
Whereas we have our clients and we have to cover it. And sometimes that means you get a less desirable job one day. But as my reporters say, it all washes out, right?
Yeah.
If you take those couple depos and just say, okay, at least I have an easy day today, and I can go back to working on my pages from when I got my butt kicked the other day.
Yeah.
But so going on with that though, as far as how things are looking here, then it it became challenging again because things are transitioning back to in person. And I had been, I'll call it digital curious for a while. Obviously, I'm a computer guy, and I play music. You've seen my guitars in the background in my house. I've been recording my own music for, I don't know, 15 years at least. So I'm not, and that with the videography, I'm not afraid of sound, microphones, cables, all that stuff. I've set that up and tore it down so many times. And I'd been saying for a long time, gosh, there's got to be a way that we can utilize this equipment to kind of provide some overflow for when we can't get something covered. You know, what would happen if we were in a situation where we committed to a client and we just could not cover it? And fortunately, for a long time, we were never in that position until one day it did happen. And this was before the pandemic, and it was in the summertime, like I was telling you about. And fortunately, it was just a little car accident case, and I called the person up and I explained the situation. I said, I can cover it. I can come and record it, and we'll just transcribe it for you after the fact. And there won't be any additional charge or anything like that if you're open to doing it this way. And they agreed, and that was our first digital job. And I thought, okay, well, this is probably going to have to keep happening at some point, you know. And when the pandemic happened, that changed things for us because now all of a sudden we have access to every resource in the state because nothing was in person. And that really kind of put things on hold for a while, and it put that need down the road. But that need has returned because with transitioning back to in person, and I found that some reporters got pickier with, you know, our overflow reporters that we work with got pickier about not wanting to take in person anymore, or some only wanted to take in person, but they were picky about where they went. And
Right.
hey, they're an independent; they can choose to do that, and more power to them. They know what they want,
Sure.
and that does not offend me at all. So we hired our first digital reporter at the beginning of last year and kind of started going down that path of learning what that would mean for our identity and our organization and how would people feel about it, and what about the farm out reporters and how would they feel about it, and would they still take work from us, because at some point someone has to do it, you know.
Agree.
and
Hmm.
and you know, you don't want to come out as the first person trying something new and getting blacklisted. So that was an interesting challenge. And even with my own reporters, I mean, I have staff reporters and I have priority to them as well. You know,
Sure.
I didn't want to offend them, and with all of the everything that was being said at the time, and there was only one source of information, and it was all negative. They hadn't had a chance to stop and think critically about it and ask themselves, is this something that we should be afraid of or not? And is this something that we're going to have to be okay with at some point?
Yeah.
And what does that look like? So that's been a big part of our challenges as an organization because it feeds directly into the hiring part of it and
Right.
the covering of the book. I mean, we have been unsuccessful at attempting to hire a stenographer in a few years. I mean, we got lucky that one person left another firm and came over here recently. And that what kind of came out of the blue.
Right.
But
But the need is there. Ultimately, you're still in need of people. You still have the ability to grow if you had
yeah,
more team members, is what I'm hearing.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, it's been difficult to even market or go after some of the cases that I want to go after because I'm afraid of letting down my commitments to our existing clients,
Got it.
right? Because it's you have to have the resources there
Yeah.
before you can kind of commit large. And that's my approach. I'm not a gambler. I'm not a gambler. My business partner, absolutely. You
Yeah.
know, and we will always say yes. Now, what's the question? But when you are the one who has to assign the book, which I have been in that situation, I fortunately don't have to do it every day. I did it all week last week. It is stressful.
Yep.
it is so stressful, and anyone who has spent time trying to do assignments, they're putting in longer and longer hours, and sometimes begging to get people to cover their book. And so it's not a situation I like being in.
Definitely not. I would agree with you completely. And so this is the theme, right, of our industry, and I hear it in every one of these interviews. There is so much work out there. And that's essentially the thesis of what I am hearing you say, is that you could use more reporters. So those of you who are listening who are not yet in the industry, we need you to join us. We need more of a workforce because there's so much work out there. Um, and you said you had the opportunity to hire your first digital. So are you hybrid now? Do you have both working reporters full time? Good
Yes.
for you. That's amazing. And how's that going? Pretty well?
Yes, it's going great
Yay.
for us. I as I thought more on it, I had the most time to think about it. I feel like, and then you forget that you're not sharing the story with everybody else. And what I came to realize is that we need beginning reporters.
Yeah.
I mean, it's our organization, and probably it's the same for everybody. It's a pyramid, right? You need new people coming in, and that kind of pushes people up to the next level, right? People that were beginning reporters, that's kind of like their push to, okay, now we need you to start taking on some more challenging
For sure.
work,
Yeah.
some more challenging assignments. And you start slow and give them one or two and see how they do. They have a mix of both until they like figure out their new flow,
Right.
because the flow is different. When you're a beginning reporter, we're not an automatic order state. So here, beginning reporters, they spend a lot of hours writing, but might not get as many orders, and likely don't get a lot of orders. And you're learning to build your stamina. And then you start as more, as you move up that pyramid, you're getting more work that's ordering, maybe more challenging work, and you're learning what that new workflow is like for you.
Yeah.
And then you go to the next level. Now you're writing real time, and you're taking jobs that order every day, but it's a mix of like some challenging stuff and maybe some stuff that's easy to you because you've
Right.
written medical stuff for the past,
Yeah.
5-10 years or whatever it is.
Yes.
But we had a 10-year gap where we didn't have any beginning reporters coming in.
Right.
And so the pyramid just kind of just got stagnant.
Yeah.
And we needed new reporters coming in and learning those skills, and so that everyone else could move up.
Yeah. And people that wanted to retire could retire, right? Because that's where we're at.
No, we don't say the R word around here.
Wait, what? I've been ready to retire for a very long time already. I am.
I
I
I hear
no. Oh man, I can't wait. I can't wait. You can't say that. We want to be able to retire, right?
Oh, absolutely, yes, 100%. Just not if you're a reporter, you can never retire, but everyone else can.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so working hybrid has kind of been interesting because the first challenge was, like I said, what are people going to think, and how do we what is the message? What are we gonna say? What do we even really truly believe? And so defining that for ourselves was really the first step.
Yeah.
And that message is different for everybody. For us, what I found out kind of out of the gate is and what I believed for a long time. And as a technologist, believe me, you think I wasn't playing with Dragon Naturally Speaking for years and all the other stuff. I understand the challenges of making a transcript. It's more than just the words, and the technologies for a long time struggled even to get the words right, and still do to some extent. But it's how do you like knowing the grammar of it, and how you punctuate the written word is, God, my brain explodes trying to make heads or tails of it sometimes. That's why I love some of the STAR conferences that go into like that grammar one that we had, the grammar rules ones that we just had was amazing. I love that. I learned so much in that because I need to know the rules. But so figuring out the story and sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there. I was talking about the technology and how it struggled over time. And I knew that it would be more costly to make a transcript that way. It just takes more time. It takes someone more time. And for us, what I found, even with the technology where it is today, it still takes more time. Stenographers walk away from a deposition, and depending on their skill, can be most of the way done
Right.
with the initial draft.
Yep.
Whereas the first digital reporting softwares that I had exposure to, now I never did the physical tape stuff, and the people that have been doing the digital recording and reporting long before me and before I got into it. Um, at first, you were walking away 0% complete.
Yeah.
You just had the recording, and then you had to start from there. And now with the products on the market like MaxScribe, you've got a really good starting point. And as they um, roll out more features, now the first digital reporter that we hired, she's able to, kind of edit while it's happening.
Yeah.
Not full on editing, but, anything that you can do during that deposition to cut down on the time on the back end is really helpful. And so that's what we have found, in our business is that it's still, there are people that say that, this is a way for companies to undercut reporters and save money. And that's not what I found. And I don't believe it's true. It's not true in my business. I have found that it takes more work, and therefore it costs more, right? Because time is money. But I have commitments that
Exactly.
I have to make to my clients
Right.
and really to the legal community at large,
Yep.
right? Like
100%.
we owe it to the legal community to keep these depositions moving forward. I mean, we're talking about, in some cases, injured clients whose lives have been affected,
Yep.
and you're going to tell an attorney, sorry, you have to wait a couple of months to get a reporter, and that just it slows the wheels of justice.
Absolutely.
So for us, it really has been, we need to keep the depositions moving, and this is the way that we're going to do it. If another stenographer calls me tomorrow and wants a job, I will hire him or her in a heartbeat. But likewise, I'm not afraid of digital either. We're going to make the record
Yeah.
however we can, and we're going to uphold our standards while doing it.
No, I think that's exactly right. And I think that's a very fair and honest perspective to have. And I really like seeing the real life example of we have both of these things working in conjunction. We have all of these entities within the industry functioning at the same time, and everybody's learning. We're always learning all the time, how to make it better and how to make it just smoother and more affordable and take less time. I mean, that's what business is all about, regardless of what your industry is. So it's really enlightening and invigorating to hear that there are companies that are doing it. They're making it happen, and it's possible. And it's obviously you're thriving. You've been with the company for almost 20 years now, which is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wonderful. And like we already said, there's just so much work out there. And I think that is something that I try to always harp on, because we're in a time where people are just constantly trying to think of what they can do to make ends meet in a way that is feasible, right? Like, we don't want to be working on the railroad for 40 years. People don't want that anymore. And so it's just really empowering to hear that there are just ways that you can do this. There are different niches that can fit your lifestyle, and the court reporting industry has so many opportunities in it. And that's really just what I like to always bring to the table, is that information, because not only do most people not know what we do at all, but they don't realize how robust the market is for us and how possible pretty much everything is, for them if they want to work individually, or, with you as an employee, or for the government. There's just so many opportunities out there. And it's really, I think, empowering when you give people that information that they can take charge and be successful. And obviously, you are a wonderful example of that. As we sort of wind up here a little bit, you've shared a ton of stuff with us, but is there anything, any last little tidbits or anything that you think you want to share with someone? Do you have a silly anecdote or anything at all that you can think of? 20 years of stuff you're going through.
Oh, yes. You ask any person that's been in a bunch of depositions, we have lots of stories, some of which we like to share, some we wish that we could forget.
Sure. Yeah.
And I don't know if it's happened to you yet, but have you been put on the record other than just, the court reporter has read back the record as requested?
I don't know as far as trial presentation goes, if I have or not, like in that context. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, no, as a videographer, I've been put on the record with physical descriptions of me entered into the
Oh,
record.
wow.
And unfortunately, and I'll leave it at this, it was a deposition um, about a priapism or priapism.
I don't know what that word
Um,
means.
that is an erection lasting longer than 4
Oh,
hours.
got it.
So
Viagra
when
gone
they
wrong.
say
I see. Okay.
not the deposition that you want as a innocent bystander
Right. Being associated with.
to be put on the record. And I won't go into details, but it was definitely an unforgettable moment in time. And I think back on that. I just told this story recently, and this was probably 15 years ago. And thankfully that attorney has long retired. I will never forgive him for it. But
Yeah, definitely not. That's so interesting. I need to know more. I will
yeah,
pick your brain later, I think. But that's, yeah, we all have some silly stories. I can't remember if I've shared it on this show or not, but one of my favorite, you know, I don't know if anecdote's the right word, but favorite story when an attorney asked somebody, it was a car accident case, and the attorney asked the witness, what gear were you in? And he was like, Gucci shoes, Prada pants. And I just don't know why, but it just makes me laugh. I just love it because it's like it makes sense. You could see how that would happen, that miscommunication would happen. But that's, one of the things we deal with. And it's just sort of a lighthearted, funny thing. But there are so many out there, things that we hear and we see.
yes, I'm all for the lighthearted stuff. That's the better end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And fortunately for me, we've had some, you have a couple great clients that are princes, and when you have a bad deposition or something, because no one wants to be deposed. It's a difficult position, especially business disputes. People are already very upset at one another, and or in a medical situation, dealing with loss or with life altering injuries, and you're there, and when people are at their most vulnerable, or their most emotional, and it's difficult at times to be there and to live through that with them, and some of the stories are hard
Yeah.
sometimes, but I'm fortunate that we have some just really awesome people that we work with, and that really kind of allow that mood to fall away when you're in those situations, and when you have a bad day, to get back into it, because every day is a new day in this industry,
Yeah.
and that's what's wonderful about it.
Absolutely. And I think that you said it brilliantly. It really is new, exciting, and it gives you that variety that keeps you engaged. It really, if you're the kind of person that thrives in that environment, it's really a great place for sure. Well, I want to wrap up with us, Sam, because we've been going for about an hour and we were like, we're going to do 10 minutes. It'll be fine. So I just want to say thank you very much for taking the time to chat with us and to educate our listeners and me. I learned a new word. I learned several things.
Not the word you wanted to learn today.
And that's how it goes, right? A lot of times we learn things we don't want to know, but such is life. Thank you very much, Sam. You're such a great asset to STAR and to our profession. And I'm really grateful for you taking the time to chat with us and reach out to our industry. I appreciate it.
Of course, thank you.
We will see you guys next time. Happy holidays.